truck drivers of Reddit's "What is your most NSFW story from the road?" My dad's been a truck driver for over 30 years, and his story he tells all the time is before the age of cell phones. He was running in the middle of the night and came up on a flipped vehicle. About that time, a state trooper pulled up. The trooper and him followed bloody footprints through the desert trying to find the driver. They never found anyone. Another time it was a similar situation, but it was an extended van with a group of people and children. He had to help find the bodies in the dark that had been scattered from the van flipping. I'm a little late to this party, but this is a pretty interesting story. My mom was a truck driver for a little bit when I was just out of high school. I took a trip with her from Texas to Louisiana, stopped at a truck stop outside Baton Rouge. We got approached by a prostitute. My mom said she wasn't interested because she wasn't gay. The prostitute said, "I'm both male and female. I have a vagina and penis." My mom, being the curious sort, she is asked how that was possible. They said, "I'm a real hermaphrodite. I was born with a working vagina and penis." My mom said she would give them $10 to see. They agreed. This person had a vaginal opening, testicles, and working penis. We ended up talking with them for about 30 minutes about hermaphroditism. It was a pretty interesting conversation. Didn't drive, but worked in safety for a large OTR company. Our e-log system had a camera option, so drivers could take pictures during pre-trips or if they were involved in accidents. Had a driver quit, and when we were getting the truck ready for someone else, we discovered he had made the home screen of his e-log tablet a naked picture of someone he had in his truck. It was terrible. The worst part was we could not figure out how to change it back. My friend's dad was apparently driving one day and a turkey fell out of a tree, broke through the window, and he was just covered in blood. But he was apparently less than a mile from completing the delivery. Apparently they thought he killed someone before they saw the turkey. Not a truck driver, but I used to work at a truck stop, if that counts. Had tons of interactions with truckers, and it's really made me appreciate what they do, but stuff they pull sometimes is so damn gross. I once walked in on a waist-down naked truck driver washing his balls in the bathroom sink. I'm talking one leg propped up on the sink while splashing water repeatedly into his crotch. He paused for a second when I walked in, then kept going on with the splashing. I choose not to stick around. At least once a month I'd find a turd sitting in one of our urinals, like I'm never going to understand the thought process of awkwardly shitting in a urinal when there's a perfectly good toilet a couple steps away. Had one of the local lizards lock herself in the bathroom and proceed to overdose on drugs. Me, being the key holder for the building, went to unlock the bathroom, and upon opening the door, the lizard fell out onto me and threw up all over my legs and feet. I don't even want to imagine what the stomach contents of a truck driver's prostitute could contain. But needless to say, I went home early that day. Threw away the pants and shoes too. Not a truck driver, but my dad was. Since he was a long-haul trucker, we would go with him during summer break. So one late night in the plains of Oklahoma on a very straight and very long wrong. In the distance, we could see taillights switching back and forth over and over again. We finally managed to catch up, and Dad comes across the CB asking if we could pass. A lady comes over and says that we could. Well, apparently there was 3 trucks total. We passed the first truck, and it was complete dark in the cab. We passed the second truck. Same thing. Complete darkness. We go to pass the lead truck, and it's a woman driver with her titties out and pulling with toys. I'm around 14 at the time, so needless to say, I was happy. Well, the lady came back over the CB and asked if we enjoyed the show and wanted to know if we wanted to sew down for another view. Politely, my dad said we enjoyed it, but was behind. Apparently, the 2 trucks in the back were taking turns swapping lanes to get a view. Driver here. I don't have any crazy stories other than old dudes beating off while driving and the standard boob flashes. But a buddy of mine stopped to take a nap and put his sun visor up at night to block the passing car lights. He saw lights flashing all around and figured it was more trucks pulling in behind him. Then he felt the cab moving and reminded himself he was in a windy area. About 4 minutes pass and he feel the cab moving again. Then hears a faint tapping on his windshield. Remember, these windshields are fucking high. So he pulls down his sunshade, and to his horror, he sees a fully nude black dude about 4'5" staring at him, just beating the shit out of his meat. He blew his air horn in the dude's face, and he didn't even flinch. Which is fucking insane. Then, the guy slid off the hood and ran off into the night. This was in the middle of nowhere. When he pulled back in later, he was white as a ghost, but definitely a good sport about it all. You could see the handprints on his hood. Creepy shit, though. Our story is from my brother. He was at a rest stop once and saw this middle-aged woman in a pink Jeep with 5 small dogs walking them. He continued about his routine and got in his truck and back onto the freeway. A few minutes down the road, the Jeep with the woman and her dogs goes flying past him and suddenly makes a sharp left turn, hits the dirt median, and barrel rolls. He stops the truck and runs to check on her. There are dead dogs scattered all over. She is laying in a ditch of water with her head just above the water. She kept asking him incessantly if her dogs are okay. They were not. She was not okay either, as she could not get up. Not my story, but a good friend. He was fairly new to the job, and I'm not 100% sure how it works, but I know he was in a company truck that other drivers have used. No big deal. It was clean, reliable, and he got paid. Well, he had this particular truck for a good week or two. He kept hearing something rattling around in the glove box, but seeing as it wasn't his truck, and he wasn't particularly overly curious about it, he just ignored it. Well, his tour ends, and he's driving it back, and that thing in the glove box starts making more noise, like a constant vibrating noise. He opens it up, and out plops a silver butt plug on the floor of his cab, starts rolling all around, and he's clearly disgusted and disturbed. He didn't want to touch it. So I think he said he found a broom and just pushed it out into the street for some other poor bastard to find. It just makes me laugh that he was traveling the country with some stranger's sex toy, maybe 5 feet away from him. Well, not NSFW, more on the funny side. I traveled down the Autobahn at around 80 kph, approaching a construction site where the 2 lanes became one. A car driver decided it was smart to cut in front of me, leaving me with an emergency brake. You could see my tire marks, still, weeks later. It's not uncommon. I raged a bit and didn't expect to see this guy again. So I left the Autobahn and approached a traffic light and, well, guess who stopped there right in front of me? You guessed it. As I was still kind of pissed about this dangerous situation, I jumped out of my truck, approached the car, and knocked on his window. I just wanted to inform him how close it was and how dangerous it was. The moment I knocked, this guy went apeshit in the car, and I quickly realized that this guy will certainly go after me. Now, I step back and try to get back to my truck because this guy was just about to beat the shit out of me. He was full dead on, in rage mode. Guy slams open his door, jumps out of the car, and comes after me. I looked past my shoulder and saw him chasing me down. Unfortunately, he was driving a quite brand new automatic car, company-owned, with company logos on. While I was looking back at him, I saw his car slowly rolling forward. Guess who forgot to put it on P? In that moment, I just started laughing, and this dude realized something is going on. He saw his car rolling away, and he tried to stop it while jumping back in. Unfortunately for him, the moment he jumped in, he hit the car in front of him. I quickly returned to my truck and drove past him still laughing. I still wonder how he explained that one to the police and his insurance. I drove past the location 30 minutes later and saw him arguing with the cops. My dad has seen a lot of shit in years of driving, but one really messed him up. Night driving, and the car in front of him is swerving all over, obviously drunk. He calls it in, but before the cops can get there, the guy drives off the road, headfirst, into a tree. My dad pulls over and tries to help. The driver is unconscious, but the girl in the passenger seat is awake and screaming for him to help. The car was so mangled he couldn't get her out on his own. Then it caught on fire. He had an extinguisher in his truck, but it was too much too fast. He listened to this girl scream as she burned alive until the scream stopped. The girl was around the same age as me, and in his nightmares, it was me in the car that he couldn't save. He would wake up in the middle of the night screaming, "I tried to save her, but I couldn't," and just to start uncontrollably sobbing. He eventually had to go to therapy over it. He's better now and still drives, but I know it's still with him. Don't drink and drive, people. You're fucking up more than your own life. My uncle has been driving trucks for over 40 years. About 20 years ago, he was hauling molten aluminum to a Honda plant in Ohio in the middle of the night. He was behind another truck that wasn't going quite as fast as him, but instead of passing him, he decided to drop in behind the guy and run for a while. About 30 miles up the road, a truck going the opposite direction crossed the center median and hit the truck in front of my uncle head on. My uncle was just barely able to get his truck stopped before running into the back of the guy he had just been following. The truck that crossed the center median burst into flames on impact. My uncle ran out and tried to put the fire out with his extinguisher, but it was like throwing a cup of water on a bonfire. The other truck driver had been ejected, and my uncle couldn't find his body to see if he was alive or not. It took the first responders a while to find the guy's body, and even longer to find his head. It messed my uncle up pretty bad for a while. My dad told me this story when he was a trucker based out of Mexico some 30 years ago, long before I was born. He was in a hurry one night to get to his destination, I think, somewhere in South America. He and a friend of his from his pueblo who needed a ride to the city he was going to were driving along at like 3 a.m. when up ahead in the road there was what looked like a woman lying down in the road. My dad, being the naive 18-year-old that he was, began to stop. He told me that as he slowed down, his friend put his hand on his shoulder and gave him the most terrified look he has ever seen and said, "Drive." Took my dad a second, and before he knew it, his friend was shouting, "Go, go, go!" And my dad just floored it. When he floored it, the woman shot right up and dove out of the way. As he was driving away, he looked in the rearview mirror, and something like a crowd of 10+ people were standing in the road watching them drive off. This sounds like a classic movie trope, and I'm like 90% sure I've seen this in a video game somewhere. He told me this story like 10 years ago when we were driving from LA to Chicago at 12 a.m. LOL. Not a trucker, but I've hitchhiked the U.S. extensively. Some of y'all need to understand that no means no. If you wanted to fuck for a ride, you should have said so, and I would have went about looking for a different ride. I've had dildos suddenly tickling my ear. Come back to the truck when we stop for food to some of the strangest gay porn and a large man in next to nothing. I've been offered showers for free at truck stops. Not like, hey, every time I fill up, they load a free shower on this card. Want one? More like, you can get a free shower if we both take one at the same time. I've had a dude absolutely refuse to pull over and let me out after they whip it out and start beating it while driving. I honestly think my reaction just made him harder. I've had one lady driver who tried to pull a knife and force sex, to which I explained I might get stabbed, but I'm a lot bigger and I'd break her ass before she did any real damage. Some 300 pounds balding guy with Coke bottle glasses licked the back of my buddy's ear when we were in a lounge, eating and watching TV. And one Ukrainian, who was obviously hauling illicit shit, told me if I didn't help him unload product when we got to the destination, him and his colleagues would beat me to death. After a while, I stopped bothering with truck stops.
I spent much of my childhood in my trucker grandpa's semi. I felt so big and important, like the queen of the road, because of how I could look down on everyone and see into their cars. And that, boys and girls, is how I learned about roadhead.